and so, because you're always curious, right? Like, how does this stuff work, and can it be used for good? And my answer to myself has been yes. It is very productive. It does help you write. It learns your styles. It learns your habits, and so it can be useful.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. It is your happy and hungry host, Phil Bass, back for yet another amazing interview with someone who we had about a year ago. We're back here at the Reciprocal Meat Conference in Oklahoma City, and Dr. John Scanga is joining us again with a very different topic. Last time we talked about dry aging.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
And Dr. Scanga, first off, I'm going to say, I say this when you're not in the room, and I'm going to say it to your face.
Oh no.
No, it's all good. Your mind comes up with really cool ideas, and it's like you're always thinking of what's the next thing. And you caught me in the hallway. You had a really neat idea that I think is really important, especially considering you have a bit of a hybrid job right now, where you got one foot in the industry, one foot in the academic world, and I think the topic that you brought up is very relevant for both categories.
Yep,
okay,
agree.
and the topic is AI, and I know we have a lot of our agricultural people out there who are probably thinking of one AI, but maybe you can define AI for us.
Well, and it's a conversation that came up for a lot of reasons. Everybody's stressed for time, and you try to find new resources and new tools that are available. And so the AI we're talking about, and the other AI works for this, is artificial intelligence. And I'm not talking about it in terms of robotics and automation and those types of things. I'm talking about the artificial intelligence that's at every one of our fingertips all the time, and that's through the things that are happening on web-based programs that help us with search engines. Mm-hmm. And really, I was having a conversation with Paul Morley at a conference earlier this year, and using artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, and those types of tools in editing functions and writing functions. And so it hit me this morning as I was waking myself up this morning that I thought, this would be a good conversation just to have with the industry, is thought-provoking of how do we as advisors and mentors and editors utilize these tools? Should we utilize these tools? How do we utilize these tools?
Well, let's go down that road. I mean,
right.
That's the next thing on my list is, should we use it? Should we not use it? Is this something that we could embrace for good? And what are some of the challenges, I guess, first off?
Well, yeah, and I think, as we get to answer that question, I don't know what the right answer is. I know I've used it. I've played with it, both in things that I've been asked to edit and things that I've been asked to write. And so, because you're always curious, right? Like, how does this stuff work? And can it be used for good? Mm-hmm. And my answer to myself has been yes. It is very productive. It does help you write. It learns your styles. It learns your habits. And so it can be useful. What are the challenges? Well, the first one that comes to mind is plagiarism, right? Yeah. Who's writing it? If the internet's writing it, are you really the author?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the balance comes in, is are you using it for a tool that comes up with ideas and generation, or are you using it as a tool to enhance what you've already done? Mm-hmm. And I see it very much as an augmentation tool. So if we think about computer vision grading, right?
Yep.
How do we augment what we already do? How do we use technology and artificial intelligence to augment what you do as an author? And we all struggle with different things and different wording, and how do you write something for clarity and those things. You have the idea, you have the data, you have all the things, and man, the tool can reach out there to the internet and use hundreds and thousands of data points to help you write something clearly and make it sound more, maybe be more clear and be more accurate. I don't know if accuracy is the right word, but concise, applicable, more understandable, relevant, that type of thing. So it can help the reader as well. So yeah.
So and so it's interesting. Like you're absolutely right. Just like any tool, you can use it for good, or you can use it for less. Less tasteful situations, right?
Absolutely. And I'm sure you've had students in your class that turn in full-on AI-generated papers, right? Like you can put 5 keywords into Chat GPT and it'll write. I mean, I've done it, like to play with it. You put keywords in there and it'll write you a paragraph or a couple paragraphs, and it sounds really good. Has data, has accurate information that it searched from the web. But
when it's also on a subject that you've never talked about too, or things that have never been seen or heard of in class, that's when the flags start showing up. I was telling you before we started recording, it's artificial intelligence may be intelligent, but it's not that intelligent.
Right.
It's only a tool, and it's only as good as the data you put into it.
Yeah,
right?
no, and that's where I see it is. I mean, I think back to your first manuscript that you put on my desk, Dr. Bass, and I'm sure, if Dr. Belk were sitting here, he would say the same thing, right?
Went through a couple red pens, I know.
And so you think about that, and you think of the time that it does that, and if students had the ability to utilize that to just help them be an instant feedback in terms of your writing style. And that's what it provides. So it makes them better writers faster. It makes all of us better writers faster. So is that a good thing or a bad? And again, it goes back to that. How do we use that tool? So it's kind of an interesting concept, and it's. I think it's a conversation that academically we have to have, and we should have Dr. Kim in here, from an editorial perspective.
That's a great
what's
point.
the policy of meat and muscle biology? What's the policy of Journal of Animal Science? Do they have a stated policy on that in terms of what's allowable? Can you have a policy? How do you enforce?
Yeah,
it's invisible, right? You don't know it.
Yeah.
So
well, in many, it's kind of interesting. You say it's invisible. It's invisible, but it's still there.
Yep.
And most folks probably don't realize, but you're encountering it every day. You already mentioned search engines.
Yeah.
I mean, it's eerie how I can type in 3 letters and it finishes the sentence for me.
Yep.
And a lot of it's probably because of the background information it's been collecting as I browse through, and I'm looking at meat cuts and cows, and it just knows that I have it knows me. It's kind of a little eerie, a little
totally
creepy,
eerie.
But also just keeping in the back of my mind, it's just a computer program, and sometimes it misspells too. Now, and not misspell the word proper. It guesses wrong.
Yep.
Right. And that's where the human part. Exactly. And it's a guess. It's an educated guess.
It's an algorithm, right? It's a prediction.
Yep.
And sometimes predictions aren't accurate, right? Just ask the weatherman.
Yeah.
And so that's all it is. But the cool thing is, the more you use it, that's what's impressed me about it, is it learns your writing style. Yeah. And then it can incorporate your writing style into its algorithms. And so it's really interesting.
No, there's a lot to be gained from it. I know I've worked with companies recently who are using that in indeed robotics and camera vision systems, and artificial intelligence is helping them write code faster.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, that's a huge benefit right there.
Yep. The time savings where the computer can predict just imagine if we could have wrote SAS code using AI back in the day, and the semicolon would already show up. Right. So, sorry, for you young viewers in the audience, go figure out what the semicolon means to SAS language. So
it means everything. It is the period at the end of the sentence. Yes. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, to that point, I do have graduate students who are using artificial intelligence for good to help with writing code right now. And for we're starting to get into ways of analyzing statistics at the academic level that the programs are becoming very, very complicated in some of the code that we're writing, and using artificial intelligence helps to fill in a lot of those gaps that otherwise would take hours, if not days, researching to figure out how to make this thing work.
Yep. And then being able to understand that. And I think that's where that, the gap lies in there, is, or the test of where we should be using it is, just because AI generates it, does the user still understand it?
Right.
And that's, you can't go write a manuscript, and pen it as the first author on a topic that you're clueless about because AI generated it, right? So do you understand what it generated, and do you understand what it's done? It's helped you along the way. And to me, that's efficiency, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why do we want to add robotics into the processing environment?
Yeah.
Because we want to make the process more efficient. We want to make it safer. We want to make it faster, more economical. The same thing here. Our time is very valuable. Our time's money.
Yep.
So if I can do a task more efficiently, then it's valuable.
Well, and okay, you made a really good point, is that whatever was generated by the artificial intelligence program, whatever that may have been, does the initiator, I won't call him the author because it's the program, it's the author, but does the initiator understand what is coming out? And I wrote down NRs. For folks who are USDA inspected or under some type of inspection, every once in a while we have a glitch in the system, and so we have to write a non-compliance record. I mean, would this be an opportunity to use it there, or tell me where you see this being more applied in the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I think being applied in the industry more. I mean, I think in training documentation, training programs, those developing SOPs, those types of things, I see it, in the generation of content. Okay. Most of your NRs are very, very issue specific. Now, if you needed to say, okay, I need to justify this decision, and so I need to write a justification on utilization of XYZ organic acid in a process. Yeah, could it be used there? Because all of that information is available. And so it could be, this could be one of those that you could say, hey, ChatGPT, write me a paragraph on the use of lactic acid in fresh beef, and all the references are there. So it could be very helpful along those lines. Very different than I'm going to try and publish this academically, right? And so, in that aspect of it, now the user has to make sure it's accurate.
Yes.
And that's where, okay, it can write it, but are you disciplined enough to go do the diligence to make sure what it wrote is the right information, is it factual, those types of things. But, I can see it more, and I've drafted this letter, I've drafted this document, paper, whatever it is, using it more as an editorial tool. So you've generated 90% of the content. Now it just needs buffed, right? It needs waxed and polished, and that's where I think AI and honestly, that's where I find myself using it more often than not. Is I've written this, and I want to change the tone of it, right? So I want it to be more convincing, or I want it to be, if I'm writing a piece for a consumer, right? I want it to be more relatable to a lay audience and to a consumer. It softens it, and it does that for you based on tone. And so it's that it doesn't change the content or the meaning or anything. It just changes the delivery. And to me, that's where I'm like, man, this is cool. Like I see that option of my writing style over here is this way, but I want it to be this way. And so you have that instantaneous coach that allows you to do it.
Well, and that's the key, right? You're learning also alongside the machine, right?
Well, I mean, we all got, that's how we train students to be better writers, right? They write it, you edit it, they edit it, you edit it, right? Back and forth. And, you take the best scientific writers that are out there, and I promise you, their first manuscript was an absolute bloodbath train wreck.
I know mine was.
And it's because I don't think anybody's born with the natural gift to do that, right? I mean, so you got to learn it.
It's something that Dr. Belk and I, we talked about on a few podcasts ago. Indeed, the writing process, scientific process, and writing process as being part of that. And I mean, I can definitely see using this tool for good in that regard. So.
And the programming aspect that you brought up, I mean, the piece that's never published. But man, it takes a lot of time to write that and develop that. My son was actually in a Internet of Things course this last semester, and they were doing a lot of programming of sensors, and they actually used it. And that's where it brings it up. Like, they were programming sensors and programming these computers to do things, and it was all AI generated code.
Well, I'm glad you brought this topic up. I know it's something, especially in the agricultural community, that we're very reluctant to embrace. It's very different. It's very new. But, I think that was probably Henry Ford's challenge when the car came out. It's like, well, what was it? If you ask people what they wanted, they'd say faster horses.
Right.
So this is that opportunity for us to maybe use something that's relatively available for most anybody to use.
Absolutely.
Just use it for good, right?
Yep, use it for good. And maybe in order to, increase the amount of good we use it for, we start talking about it more. And I thought that was the cool thing here is, let's start the conversation. Is it okay? I mean, that's a question that I think needs to be asked and needs to be answered. And where is it appropriate? And if we get to a place where it's like, in academia, in scientific writing, in the scientific process, we can implement these tools to improve the outcome, and it's okay. It's acceptable. I think it's gonna increase its utilization, and it's gonna increase its utilization for good.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. If we better understand something, it's more likely going to be used for good.
100%.
Yep, absolutely.
Well put.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on the artificial intelligence front?
Well, I just wish we'd have had it sooner.
Would have made your program go by quicker.
Yeah,
you know what? I
I'd
thought
have
about
more
that.
hair.
Well, and you just got taller than your hair. That's all. I think about that, and I also think this is interesting. This is a little bit more philosophical, but I think about there's a number of folks down the hallway here at the Reciprocal Meat Conference that are maybe don't have much hair, but also have very silvery looking hair, and they probably said the same thing about when SAS went to just Windows-based software.
Stopped punching cards and actually went to SAS on the mainframe.
And, or even their predecessors who did everything by hand.
Right.
I mean, you're calculating least squares means by hand. That's crazy to think. So.
Well, and you think of the doors that were opened up with some of that with that computing horsepower and our ability to build these complex models. Yeah. As you go from straight. We went from analysis of variance to mixed models, analysis of variance to these complex networks that we're running now, and principal component. I mean, all these things that without computers, I mean, I wouldn't say they weren't possible, but man, they'd be awful prohibitive. And I think that's where this leads us to, is it just opens doors for us to expand the information we can get out of data and expand the information we can get out of science, because we can do more complex things. So.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, we don't have a beer, but I think a beer or two would make this discussion go much, much longer, because it's very philosophical at this point. But really cool. I love the ideas. Thank you for bringing it to the attention of MeatsPad.
Phil, it's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
It's always good to sit across the table. So I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Let's
Proud
do
of you.
this again sometime.
Glad you're where you're at, and thanks for doing this. You're
of
you're an
course.
asset to the industry. So
I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Very good.